Dr. Dennis Bielfeldt, and I'm Professor of Philosophical Theology at the Christ School of Theology. And I'm also blessed to be the president of the Institute of Lutheran Theology and the Chancellor of Christ School of Theology. But I love to teach. So when I was an undergraduate, I started reading, and I didn't know what to read exactly. So I went to the library and I was looking in the stack of books, and I found a book called The Critique of Pure Reason. And I thought, well, that would be an interesting book to try to read. And it was. It was really hard to try to read that as an undergraduate. But as I read that book, I got interested in a guy by the name of Hegel, and I decided I should read Hegel on history. And so I ended up, as an undergraduate student, writing a paper on Hegel and his philosophy of history. And all that was so exciting. But I had to graduate as an undergraduate and go back home and farm with my dad. And I raised sheep and did a lot of other things on the farm. Finally, finding myself at the University of Iowa and studying these thinkers, Kant and Hegel, and on also theology. I was so interested in theology because of my church. And so all of these things gave me a passion to read and study. So I did a PhD at the University of Iowa, and this PhD was in contemporary theology and religious reflection, with an emphasis on philosophical methodologies and techniques. And so that's how it all began. Do I see my vocation here as serving God? Yes, I do. In fact, God makes our ways straight, the paths we take through life. And, I studied philosophical theology. I taught philosophy for years in a number of institutions, but always it was pushed, my study, or motivated by the big questions. So as one's a professor, and I was a full professor at a state institution, a university, a graduate faculty, and all of that, I became, shall we say, uneased by the fact that this was all I was going to do with my life. And I knew that we needed to have a place in Lutheran landscape where the big questions were studied. And so I set about trying to say, well, why don't we develop a place that really makes as its center motivation the study of theology, for the glory of God, the study of theology. And we'll produce pastors and we'll do all of these things, but let's not marginalize theology because it's at the center of what we do. So I was really excited as a Lutheran pastor. To be able to start to work on this project and bring it to fruition. My primary fields of study basically are in the philosophy of language, which connects to questions of metaphysics, the question of how to relate disciplines to each other, questions of truth. And so what I teach is courses that connect to that, logic, and so my primary research areas would be in theology and science, in philosophy of religion, and in Luther studies, with the specialty there, I guess, of questions of theological semantics in Luther and how he uses language and how truth arises in language. So these are what I work on, questions of emergence and reduction, supervenience, how different levels of description relate to each other, questions of causality, how we might connect God's agency with changes in the world. These are the things that animate my research. So I grew up and I had a wonderful pastor who took me through Luther's Catechism for 2 years. We met 2.5 hours every Saturday morning for 2 years to go through the Catechism and the Enchiridion. And he instilled in me a sense of the seriousness of theology, that theology was a very important discipline and that the particularity of the propositions was very important. So this sense that I had of the seriousness of theology, the particularity of the propositions, the truth, the assertions that these propositions made, has really been my underlying motivation theologically to explore. So, you know, I do philosophy. I taught philosophy for many years. Mostly, I taught philosophical courses at the university level, and I've always wanted to apply, philosophical methods and techniques to some of these questions in theology, and the questions of meaning and questions of reference. Questions of the relevance of theological language in our day. Well, I have to be honest with you. I love to teach logic. I always have loved to teach logic. I've taught logic at the university level for many, many years. Formal logic and semantics we hear at the doctoral level. And I love to teach modal logic. That's the logic of possibility and necessity. And I like logic so much because I can deduce from what is true other things that are true. And these are called, deductions that are done within its systems of logic that preserve truth. I'm very interested in truth. And so I'm the president of the Institute of Lutheran Theology, and I'm also the Chancellor of the Christ School of Theology. And I teach only PhD courses now, it seems. But I have to tell you, I loved to teach something called faith, knowledge, and reason. I taught that for at least a decade to MDiv students. And I love to teach that because we talked about the question of truth. How does Aristotle play, and how did Aristotle and Plato play in the tradition? We talked about these philosophers from the standpoint of how they were used by theologians and how theologians understood their language and and the truth conditions of that language. So I loved to teach that, and I met so many great students over the years, and now they're out being pastors and they're in pulpits, and I hope that that course was a blessing to them because they were a blessing to me.